do you actually answer questions and then ask me? I mean, there's like ask me anything. I mean, do you have the ability and the experience to actually respond, Josh?
I do, and I think we should do a podcast episode that simulates that same thing.
Oh my God.
Mm, Captain
Cool.
Segway.
Captain, and the timing was impeccable.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome, Ace. Entry music. Da, 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 da. It's the Bob and Josh show.
All right, here we go. Episode 239. Back to the basics for us. Back to some things we love. We love quick hitting questions and our ability to move on. It also helps keep Bob from doing Bob things. So this is part one of our Agile Potpourri series. That's right, Potpourri. Before we jump in, just a reminder, we would love to hear some more questions from you. So hit us up on Discord, on Twitter, on Instagram, wherever you find us, get them to us and we'll feed them into the next couple of episodes. Before we jump in, keep some eyes open on Kazi. New website, new offerings, classes, all kinds of fun stuff. Also, you can hire me. That's right. I look forward to that request of Josh. We could use your help, and I am ready to go. All right, here we go. On to the episode.
This is from Sharman Ghassemi, who, if I remember correctly, is a Scrum Master, mostly a Scrum Master coach from the Toronto area.
Mhm.
So thank you, Sharman. He occasionally attends my moose herd as well. And I know he's listened to the podcast. And let me read this, everyone. So
Well,
thank you.
before we go
Thank.
there,
Oh, fine.
I just wanted to do. Jeez. One of the really good points Bob had this morning when we met about what topic we're going to talk about is the fact that we've gone relatively deep in some things, and I think Bob's words where we waxed and waned. Well, we're not a moon, waxed poetically. I forget the exact words that he used. Um,
Philosophically, we've gotten we Metacasters we've gotten soft and squishy.
wow.
And then I mean the good news is Josh and I reflect a
Mhm.
lot actually on the Metacast. So soft and squishy is soft topics, things like and they're all important. So
Yeah,
there's no apology about the importance of what we've been talking about.
exactly.
But we've talked a lot about, safety and layoffs and negotiation
Mhm.
and we wanted to get back to brass tacks.
Ooh, yeah.
Get back to tactics, get back to, right, how do you do blarg?
Yeah, the things that you're wrestling with every freaking day.
Yeah. And don't let us wax philosophically, or ramble. One of us rambles incoherently much of the time. Don't let that happen.
I, I
So
can't. I'm fighting so hard not to say anything.
I know, I know. I don't know which one it is. I
Yeah,
have
me
no
either. No one
I
knows. No one
I
knows.
I have no recollection of that event.
Okay, so back to the origin of today's discussions. Sorry about that, Bob.
All right, you ready?
Oh,
You ready?
yeah.
So there was just a comment that said, "Thank you, Bob and Josh, for your fantastic podcast over the years. Here are some topics, challenges that might be worth talking about. If so, the thank you in advance, Charmin. And anyone who's listening in, throw some. You'll get a flavor for what we're looking for, hopefully, in the questions, and I'd love to take some in real time. So first one up: how to get people to join online calls with camera on. How do you do
Okay.
that?
So there's two things there. Um, I generally start back to team norms and
Hmm?
put that as a non-negotiable. Now, what I have done with various teams is like stand-ups. Stand-ups, maybe it's okay to not have the camera on, but when it's a refinement or something like that, sprint planning, whatever it might be, like cameras are on. The one issue that COVID has created is that I have worked with folks that have a strong desire not to have their image captured in any digital fashion. And you have to respect that. You can't force someone into that. Now, then the discussion becomes, is that personable? Is that personable? Is that person capable of working with your team and being an effective? team
Right.
member without having the camera on, and that's a discussion you have to have. That doesn't mean you boot them out, but I think you have to have that discussion and decide if that's a non-negotiable. And if so, then work with that person. But I've had folks that I've worked with where they've grabbed me and they pulled me aside and say, "Hey, listen, you might think I'm a conspiracy theory nut or whatever, and you can think whatever you want, but I do everything I can to not have my image captured in any way because I don't know what happens with it once it's gone." And I didn't think anything of that person besides, okay, I got to respect exactly what this person is feeling and make sure I support them. Now that was pre-COVID, pre-remote, all day, every day. But going back to the start, it's got to be, this is a team norm. This is what we do.
I mean, I'm going to react to that example you gave, Josh, and I might, um, if that came up in the hiring process, and I would hope that I would surface that in the hiring process, then I would not. To me, that would be a showstopper nowadays.
Yeah,
If I was in a company, and we're talking zero camera, right? Like zero
right.
digital representation. So,
Yep.
8 hours a day, 5 days, whatever it is, add perpetuity. There's no cameras. So in the hiring process, I would probably say no. If it was important. Now, if it was, an existing, COVID, an existing hire, I would have a really hard conversation with them. And it's not like 100%, but I would try to navigate with them. There's got to be circumstances where you can collaborate with your team. And part of that collaboration is your facial expressions. Part of that collaboration is face to face. Like you and I. It
Hmm.
would be like look at the Metacast and the quality of the Metacast if you weren't seeing us. Again, I'm not saying
Yeah.
it's no comments, Josh.
Oh, sorry.
No smart count. But I think it's pretty serious
There's a
to go zero.
so to
You're
retort.
going to disagree with me. I can hear it in your voice.
Well, there's a really good comment in the chat where David asked, "Does engagement equal camera on?" I think generalized, yes, but that person was a fantastic member of the team. And if I were to have that sit down discussion with him and he explained the situation, the first thing I would have to do as a leader is say, like, okay, how do we work around this? What do we do? You have to be hyper ultra engaged without your camera on. Can you do that? Let's see how that works. And another thing that we had to do was we had to have that discussion with the team so that everybody knew and understood that this person was uncomfortable, because in the world of phones, cameras get snapped all the time. Cameras, jeez, oh Pete's, I can't talk today. Pictures get snapped all the time in random places, and just to allow that person to have the respect that they're asking for, that's something that we had to work on. Now, again, that was pre-COVID, so it wasn't the same, but I don't know that camera on equals engagement. To me, it's one of those things where a subset of people ruin it for all of the others. What typically happens is a very disengaged person has the camera off. There have been times where I've been very engaged with the camera on. And sorry, God, Bob, can you like reach through the screen and slap me? Where I've been very engaged with the camera. Thank you. I have been very engaged with the camera off. So yeah, it's a that situation is tricky, but that's I've only ever had that happen twice with the hundreds of people that have been on teams of mine. So the typical solution is going to be you have to have the discussion about why it's important. This is a team norm. This is who we are. This is how we
Right.
win. So
Right.
I need you to step up and be a team member. Yeah, we can spend a lot of time on that edge case, but that's it's an edge case. So Bob, I think you and I are both.
So
Let's let's
I
just do it.
triggered a little bit, but I meant it.
Yeah.
Getting back to how the answer from me, I do this in my classes. So it's part of team agreements. So I run virtual classes, and as a prerequisite to the class, I talk about cameras being on. if someone would register for the class and pay me, and and then later on they would reach out to me and say, I have a problem with the camera, I would be like, that I understand fully. Um, and they said zero, I would say, that's great. Here's your money back.
Hmm.
It's not going to work out.
Right.
And it's not just engagement. You went to engagement. I also go to like communication channels. There's that old study that talks about there's words, there's inflection, and then there's body language, right? And words carry like 10% of the communication between you and I, and intonation adds another 20 or 30%. So an additional 60% of the communication channel is in visual cues and body language. So now you could see that I'm engaged or disengaged, but you could also, if we were doing backlog refinement, you could see me getting, like, if I'm rolling my eyes when Sally is pointing, right? I'm engaged or disengaged, but I'm having a problem with my behavior. I'm having a problem with my my team norms, and you could see that as opposed to not seeing that. So I want that in the class. We do a lot of breakout groups. We do simulations and things like that, and the face to face. Now I don't dictate. If someone wants to feed a cat, they want to have lunch, you turn your camera off for goodness sakes. But the majority of the time, and you're not doing it for me, you're doing it for your team, or in this case, the class. I don't think I've ever had anyone not, and maybe I have a narrow audience of the attendees, but it's never been an issue for me if and I haven't had 100% cameras on either. So we hit a sweet spot. I think I triggered on the zero, Josh. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, I'm right there with you. I just have this moment where I was presented with a counterpoint where I felt this responsibility to support this person
Yep,
through that, and so I just wanted to put it out there and make sure people understood there is an edge case, very slim percentage that would
absolutely.
actually happen, but you need to be thoughtful of it. But in 99% of the teams and jobs that are out there, it's got to be
Yeah,
one of those things where yes, David, engagement starts with camera on. It doesn't mean
yeah,
engagement equals it being on, but it starts with it. So that's the
yeah,
stance you have to take.
yeah. And again, please don't take Metacasters. Don't take me as being instantaneous. I would try to, you know, depending on the person, but in general, I would try to be very patient and guide them through the process, if you will. So
All right.
so I'm
So
not going to I'm not going to immediately fire someone.
yeah, I mean, you give them a half hour and then fire them.
No, I'm going to walk them through, and the
Yeah, I
why,
know.
like
Yeah,
you were going to,
yeah,
Josh, right? You were talking about it's not just because, I think if someone is saying, "Well, cameras on because they say so," that's absolutely the wrong thing. There's some really, sort of important whys behind it, I think.
yeah. There's a
All right.
question in the chat about introverted team members and that they shut down when they're on camera. I'm an introvert. I understand that feeling. So is Bob. And one of the fascinating things about the post COVID era is the energy that is sucked from you when you're on continual meetings. And at my last place that I was at, we actually had meetings where we all agreed this is going to be a camera off meeting because we've all been in meetings the whole day and like we just need a break because it's one of those things where the way I reason it is that you're always on. You don't have a chance to relax, push back in the chair, do whatever, think about something, look out the window, whatever it might be. You're always on, and that takes energy and focus to really be engaged the whole time. So you have to
Yep.
respect that. But also, unfortunately, it's the harsh reality of the world that we live in right now, and the approach that I take, very similar to Bob, is you present the facts of why this is important. We aren't doing this just to do this. We aren't doing this to drive you crazy. These are the reasons why we believe this is important, and we believe you're a very important member of this team, so here's how we think is best to maximize it. And I'll help you, I'll support you, but we've got to work through this because if you can't, then our team's not going to be as strong as it can be.
Real quickly, Josh, I want to sort of plus one to what you said, but on the introvert, I think pre-COVID, COVID, post-COVID, we need to honor our introverts by making sure that they have private time.
Mhm.
They have personal time to recharge, to work alone. One of my pet peeves pre-COVID agile, there was this notion in the agile space. You saw this. I mean, you did this at the Dude to some degree. Is everyone is in an open space, right? Everyone, we're going to have pods, and everyone's going to be out there, and that's great. So we're collaborative, but it didn't honor the introverts.
Yeah.
It didn't honor the introverts' need for quiet time, for space time,
Mhm.
for themselves. Some places did. Some places had like rooms that introverts could go to. So it's yes, cameras on, but we also need to remind ourselves, that introverts, and it's a majority, I think, of the technology population are introverts. We need to remind ourselves to it's not bad to be alone. It's not bad to even in an 8-hour day. I'm not asking for cameras on 8 hours a day,
Yeah,
right?
that's
It's
a
just for relevant meetings. Of course, you should have some time.
yep.
Okay, next question from Charmin. Let's see, what is it? Having a scrum team of members across different time zones, not being able to include everyone in all team meeting. I like, you know what, Josh, real quickly, and I want you to weigh in. I like this tactical focus. You know that?
Yeah,
I,
it's fun. It's nice. It's quick hitters.
it's not. It's nice. It's quick hitters. They're not easy questions necessarily, but it's very different from what we've been doing. So
I
hit
love
it,
it.
hit it. Time zones, distributed teams, and getting people together.
It takes a whole lot of effort. And the more diverse the time zones are, obviously the harder it is. But there is a time, there is a way to make that happen, even if it's just for the stand up. And at that point, I think you also have to start to discuss, is there a way to remake the teams, to reshape the teams so that you minimize the time zone difference? That's what I ended up doing at Dude Solutions, where we just created separate scrum teams and we allowed them to operate, which was most effective for them and most effective for everybody else. So if you can rearrange the teams to minimize the number of time zones people are working across. If not, then you've got a lot of hard work to do in trying to find ways to actually get people chatting together. Even if it's just for the stand up, that's at least a good start.
See, I disagree with you, Josh.
Oh dang.
You made it sort of like it's Charmin's job or someone's job to create the landscape. And I think it is a team agreement kind of thing or an instantiation kind of thing. But at the end of the day, be a freaking this is going to sound brutal, but be a freaking agile team. You're spread around the planet. Suck it up and figure out how you're going to collaborate. Right now, I asked for volunteers to help me with my blogs. So a real example, uh, I put on the Agile Moose and I asked for some people to help me repackage my blog so it's more approachable, so it's more searchable, whatever content. And I put it out there, and maybe 9 people signed up to volunteer. Um, and they don't know each other. I know everyone. they don't. They heart not all of them know each other. What's the spread? The spread is Australia, some U.S. folks, Egypt, Europe, couple people in Europe. So probably from a time zone perspective, that's about as distributed as you can. There might be one person from India in there. And to their credit, they're starting to figure out how are we going to meet, and it's a challenge for them, right? They have a kickoff. They want to have a kickoff brainstorming session to form as a team, and it's like crap. This is going to be a challenge. Yeah, but what I'm proud of is they're not looking for a manager to fix it, or they're not looking for reorganizations. I mean, that would help, but they're addressing it, and I have the same view for the team. Put it on the team. Solve that problem yourself. Can the organization make it easier? Yes. Should the organization make it easier? Yes. But while you're there, I mean, be a damn team and figure and it's not. I'm not trying to be and figure that out. You have. I mean, you're smart. Figure out how to be an effective team.
The one tool that you can use to do that, and it is more effort, is moving to exclusively asynchronous work and chat and getting really good at Confluence or whatever it might be of creating ways for people to pool information from previous discussions or anything like that, rather than having to be in a specific spot at a specific at jeez, oh Bob.
You were having issues, man.
I know.
Were you doing a little nippy? Like
You did
what?
well, no, it's just water,
What?
unfortunately.
Okay, okay. I'm just
Unfortunately.
checking.
Yeah.
All right.
So one of the challenges a lot of companies have is they've built their operations around meetings. So information is transferred. You have to be in a specific meeting at a specific time to see slash hear a specific slide. And if you weren't there, poof, it's gone. And you hear about it like third, fourth hand. So I've done a lot of work with companies to try and get them to create everything in the written word so that everything can be pooled
Yeah.
from it. There's a lot of tools that will capture all of the audio and translate it into text so that way anybody that's not in a meeting, you can quickly scan it. You don't have to go through and like watch the entire hour to find that
Yeah.
one thing that's important, but there's a ton of tools companies can use to make that happen to facilitate it, but you have to flip everything to you have to enable that information to be pooled by somebody whenever they need it.
Can I again? Yes, but I'm going to disagree a little bit. That's for a team that's running. So I think when you're starting, you can, part of starting is getting to know each other,
Mhm.
forming team norms, sharing a little bit. We're forming a team. I don't know if you can do that by checking into a
Right, yeah,
repository.
you're right.
Right. So now once we figure out that we're not going to meet, to Steven's point, the daily scrum doesn't have to happen in the morning East Coast time. Once we figure out, we're going to do daily, if we're going to have daily stand-ups or once a week stand-ups, they're going to happen this time one week and this time the other. So we're being fair with the distribution. Then I think you can do the tool thing. But make sure that you start up the team well,
Yeah.
and I think you can only do that face to face, fortunately or unfortunately, which means the team's gonna have to stretch a little bit. Oh, one cool thing I just thought about? Sharman, the guy that was asking these questions, he's actually on that volunteer team, and guess what he's doing? He's actually leading the effort, and it's not easy to pull people together
Yeah.
to do a kickoff, to do that liftoff for the team.
Sounds good. Alright, next one?
Did we miss anything there that you wanted to cover?
Probably. I'm sure we did.
All right, hold on. Next question then. How to deal with losing a scrum master or a PO with minimal impact to the team? What do you think, Josh?
Well, there's 2 answers there.
They're not the
1,
same, right? They're not.
I
I,
kinda
I,
think they
do you want
are.
to tease them apart, or do you want to handle them?
I I'm gonna handle them together, and then if you wanna
Okay,
break them out,
okay.
that's fine, and I think, unfortunately, there's 2 options. 1, they weren't very good, so the loss doesn't really matter.
Oh, that's not very nice. Oh,
Factual?
but I'm calling an
Yeah,
ace an ace.
yeah. Oh,
Oh,
yeah, thank you. Uh, or they were really good, and they've done a really good job, and the team can carry on pretty darn smoothly for 2, 3, 4 sprints. Now, there's obviously stuff that lives in the middle, but if POs and scrum masters are really, really good, which many of them really, really are, then there's that runway that's out in front of it that I've had this happen to teams. And we look at everything that they have and like, we're good for 4 sprints. We got to have somebody before that 5th sprint, but we're okay to stay on the glide path that we've established as a team because we've worked our tail off and we aren't in a reactionary just in time planning mode where everything's always a scramble. So those are my 2 points. Bob, I'm sure there's more for you in the middle.
well, one before I tease it, I do think there's a maturity. I agree with you. So if I have a high performing team, and that's a real that not there's not a lot of those in the universe, but to
Right.
say I have a high performing team, then it changes, I think, my response drastically. So I'm not going to me that's an edge case, and I don't want to talk about it. Right? That you that's because there's not a lot of those. Then I want to tease the roles apart. I think the product owner role, since it's this business facing role, and the scrum master, they're not the same. They're important roles, but they're not the same role. It's the ask role, It's the navigate value delivery role, and it's sort of how we operate, the facilitative role, the coaching role, um, and they're very different. I think the team could probably lean into doing without the scrum master or scrum mastering themselves, even maybe at maybe not a beginning team or a new team, but a moderately
Yeah.
experienced team. They
Yeah.
they could probably figure that out. Even you were saying, well, they could run for 3 or 4 sprints without a PO, perhaps. I That to me is an alarm. They might, but what if things start shifting? Right? What if requests start shifting? What if priorities start shifting? Not that that would ever happen in the real in the real world after a day, but so I think the PO is a really hard thing for the team to product owner themselves. I'd rather do that. The other thing I'm concerned about is there's almost like this devaluing, right? Yeah, how do you deal with it? Like they don't have value. Uh, the roles, like one response, it's so if we the question is phrased like, how does the team accommodate those roles? How does the team replace those roles? My default response is they don't. It requires an emergency. It's an emergency impediment, and the organization needs to step up and find a PO right now for this team, and they need to find a scrum master. Now, the PO has more. It's more urgent to get a PO in there right away, and a scrum master has maybe slightly less urgency because the team can do that for just a little bit of time. But the organization needs to respond. I don't want the team, again, remember there's this outlier, really high performance team. People put themselves out of a job. I'm not talking about those because they're kind of unicorny. I want to talk about most teams. So get off your butt, organization, and fill those roles.
Yeah. I didn't talk about the thing that happens across the rest of the organization. I was talking about specifically that team, but Bob is 100% right. You have to get that job posted and start recruiting instantly. And what I end up doing with teams is saying, okay, let's establish what we're going to do as a team. The way I've always done it is if one of those roles reports to me, then I step in and I fill in that role. And I become the scrum master. I become the product owner if I'm the head of whatever it might be. Then I step in and handle that and I do that. I'm not going to be as good as the person that's there every day, but I can at least help them limp along. Now, the one thing that Bob said is something that I really push on my leaders, which I consider the scrum master and product owners to be, is that ultimately your job is to put yourself out of a job. Now that never happens, but what that does is you are continually influencing and educating the members of your team to start to think like those roles.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, it doesn't mean they're rock stars and they've done it, but they've at least started the process so the team doesn't panic. And yes, it's still an urgent need. It needs to happen, but you need to stop the panic, and you stop the panic by not allowing it to happen the previous months or years by having those folks work the way they are. And so the way I've always done it is whoever is responsible for that role swings in and fills that. And that's also one of those
Yeah.
things that's always a kick in the butt for that person to make sure they understand the urgency of this getting hired because they're doing it. So now it's not just hurting this other team that's over here, but it's hurting them, hurting in air quotes, because they are unable to do the job they're supposed to do 100% of the time. So that does create an urgency within the organization because it
Yep.
does flow upstream, and Josh isn't going to be able to do this. And I've had talks with CXOs and said, okay, so I've lost a couple of scrum masters or whatever. I'm going to cut this part out of my job because I need to go support these teams. And so it's felt pretty broadly when it's handled like that.
One thing I should clarify on what I was saying, I'm not talking about Scrum Master as a meeting note keeper or a meeting
Yeah.
taker, and I'm not talking about a product owner as a backlog generator. I'm talking about a full function product owner or a full function Scrum Master doing every aspect of their role. So you can talk yourself into if they just schedule meetings. Oh, the team can do it. Of course, the team can do that. But you're missing so much other nuance of what a scrum
Mhm.
master, what a great scrum master does. So that's actually you know, they lost a great scrum master. That's a big loss. They lost a great product owner. It's not just the backlog, it's how are they handling the entire organization?
Yeah.
How are they navigating? all these priorities? How are they making great value decisions? How are they managing expectations? I mean, there's a lot of nuance to those roles. Um, and that's why I'm saying, you need to get a professional firefighter, right? Yes, you can go get a fire extinguisher at Sam's Club or something, or you can get a bucket of water. But if you have a you want professionals doing, you want a professional team, and I think you want professionals in those roles. You ready for the next one, Josh?
Yeah, I just do want to hit a thing that Stephen brought up in the chat about splitting POs across teams, and I agree. I am a staunch fighter for one PO, one team. Good scrum masters can cover multiple teams, so I think there's a difference there. But it does open the door, as Stephen said, to funding issues of, well, you kind of made this happen with one scrum master instead of two. Like, maybe we just don't spend that money again next year. And that's why step one is get the job open and funded and all that stuff. And it's not even funded, because you can say we've been funding this position for years, so we just need to backfill. It's not a new fund or
So,
anything like that.
so you're saying the one PO per team? Is that sort of what?
That's how I operate, and that's what I've seen work best. So I'm going to fight
Okay.
for it.
So I've seen a different. I mean, again, it's budget driven.
Hmm.
I've seen a product owner take two teams, no more. If the streams of work were similar, in some instances, the value streams or the individual team streams were similar enough work in a multi-team contributing fact that you could have a product owner balance two teams. And budget is one of the constraints for that, right? But if there's two different products, like it's I don't know what would be you know a toaster and a blender, then it doesn't. Those are two totally different products, and it would be really hard to do that.
All right,
Next question. Let me
let's do
let
it.
me get it. And this is Charmin's last question. When doing when doing high level feature estimation at the beginning of a project, is it okay not to include all team members and go with only a few? I like his questions today. They're making me think.
I say
What do you
yes.
think?
I say yes because that's how I do it.
Is it?
Yeah, so when it's higher
I
level,
like today. I'm
yeah,
disagreeing with you a lot. So no, make your case
yeah.
so I can cut you off at the knees
Ooh, wow, okay. Aggressive
or
today.
at the
Eh,
ankles.
for epic level items, which is what I use when I forecast out like the next year or something like that. So these are things that take anywhere from 2 sprints to a quarter. So it's that type of sizing. I exclusively do it with architects, a handful of like technical leaders that are out there, along with product leadership, because I don't want us to get down into the weeds. We're not trying to get down into the weeds because, again, the likelihood that these things are actually going to happen is still up in the air. Yes, we think we're going to do it, but to Bob's point that he made to me 10, 15 minutes back, is something might change. Things might change. So I do not invest the entire team with things that are still relatively deep in what I call the fog. So yes, they're out there. We think
Uh,
they're going to happen, but it could come, it could go. We aren't totally sure yet. As it gets to within a quarter, so once it's 6 sprints away, that's when I bring the team in and say, like, okay, we have a pretty good track record of once it makes it
yeah.
to like 6 sprints out, it's gonna happen. So that's when I bring the team in. And that's how I handle it, just to make sure that we're not overspending, overcommitting on something that's still relatively far out there in the fog and could not happen.
It's one
So,
of those it's one of those forgotten metaphors from the Metacast, from the archives of the Metacast, of you bringing up the fog. I haven't heard that in a long time. I like
yeah.
that. I like the fog. I'm not smiling to make fun of you, Josh. I'm smiling because I just like that metaphor. Um, why do I disagree? It's some I agree with what you said. I'm thinking in things like inclusiveness, right? Vision, feedback, mining people who unexpected people for ideas, right? Not just the architects. There might be an idea out there about feasibility or alternatives or options. I'm also thinking of optimizing it so it's not a waste of time. You said something like, "I don't want to go in the weeds." Well, then it's the default. Oh, they're going to take it into the weeds. Well, what if we facilitate it so it doesn't go there? What if we just have positive transparency at a team level of where are we going and sort of sharing that, and it's very efficient. What if we could do that? And that's what I'm where I'm leaning in. Uh, Now, if we can't do that, then I would lean into your approach. But I'm wondering if we could, like, would the benefits outweigh the dangers from a whole team perspective? And my gut is telling me that it might. It might.
Yeah, my counterpoints are um, there. There's things that happen with large teams, and it ultimately, what I believe, corrects itself with trust. As teams grow and as the capability for one human to not be in every meeting and every discussion across the board, teams get to that point where they can't. And so everybody wants to be in every meeting because they don't trust that it's being done well. So that's when you, as a part of the leader, as the leader, helping the team scale, you have to have really hard discussions about, listen, you have to accept the reality that there's going to be code written that you're not going to see. You're not going to know what happens, but you know that we've built a strong enough culture that you can trust it's going to happen well, because otherwise people stop doing things because they're in every meeting. So the other thing, the way I combat the points that you have is that as we do that large sizing, we start to identify the big questions and the big challenges that are out there that we don't have an answer to. So those actually show up on that next six sprint view before the actual feature does, of we know we have to figure this thing out, and there's not an architecture team that goes and solves it. It lands on a team. So they have to figure it out. So they start to be a part of the solution to that unknown bit. So they start to understand the challenge of that feature that's coming, and they help make it a reality. So I am not a fan. I don't believe in there's a services team or an architecture team that builds things that then it like brings down from upon high and says, teams, you can use this now because we've built it.
Right. Right. You just handled what part of the solution. So we're arguing about when to
Mhm.
some degree, right? I just want it to be that the earliest appropriate moment to get the team
Yeah.
engaged
Yep.
in an efficient way. And not for me. It's so that I mean, I want to actually I want to grab the brains of the team
Mhm.
and get them in the game because I think that creates better solutions, more better understanding, more energy at a team level, right? More empowerment, more energy. So I don't know when that is. It's probably different for different streams and different
Yeah.
products and different companies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at various scales, um, it's one of those things because you want to maximize what people do best, and you want to enable them to do that.
Yep.
But you also need to have them understand the full context of everything that's happening and everything that's going on. You have to get clarity for them. Otherwise, they're going to do what they do best, but maybe it's going to be misaligned because you didn't do a good enough job of helping them get context. And part of what we're talking about, and Bob is really hitting it, is this is a huge piece of the context around what this is and why it is and how we're going to solve it
Yep.
and do all those things. So it's the I actually view it as the similar to some of the other things in Agile. What's the last responsible moment
Yep.
that you can do that? For small teams,
Yep.
it might be at the very beginning. For really large teams, it might be six
Yep.
sprints out or whatever it might be. So you have to
Whatever
figure
it
out
is.
what that is. It's not easy. There's
Hey,
no silver bullet.
did you ever write up the fog?
Yeah.
That sort of. Did you?
Mhm.
Did you have a link to it or something? Did you put it on? I think you did something like
I
that.
have in the past, and we branded it the Agile Donut.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
So I remember. Okay,
And I
but I mean,
actually
have
own
you?
the agiledonut.com. So it's one of those things that's on my back burner of, hey, I really need to turn this into something.
Okay. Well, I
So it's out
wasn't
there.
twisting. I wasn't, but that was a
Yeah.
good. That's a good idea, and it really is not. It's not a framework. It's sort of a. It's a metaphor or a mindset thing.
Mhm.
So that's the end of Charmin's questions. We nailed four of them. Did anything come up in chat? or do you want to close this?
No, I think we're good. We're 50 minutes in.
Did we actually declare this? What the title of this episode was, Josh?
Well, we loosely refer to this as Agile Potpourri, but it sounds like it's
Did
because
we
you wanted
say
a
that in the
series of
beginning?
potpourri.
Yeah, I don't know if we said that. Could you
I
say
can do
that
it in the
again,
intro.
Josh? No, could you say that again? I just want to.
Potpourri.
Thank you, Josh.
Potpourri.
Potpourri. Yeah, we need. It just makes me smile for whatever
The, the
reason.
the only image I have of potpourri is in my grandmother's bathroom. There was this like
Yeah,
little bowl of things, and it was like dried leaves and flowers and things. I'm like, what the
I
hell is
know.
that? You know what it? But
It
well,
smells good, but then if you
yeah,
keep it for like what I noticed is if you keep it for 25 years, it sort of loses something, right?
it just starts to smell
It
like dust.
exactly and look like dust as well. All right, so Metacasters, so this is part one, and there will be a part deux potpourri issue episode coming up in the future. I'm just teasing you. And that would be a great time if you have questions that you want to tee up. It's not too late to pose them and whatever. Give us feedback now, email, offline, however you do it, and we'll weave it into the potpourri series.
Yes. So options of how you can get those questions to us, whatever platform you're on right now to watch this, you can leave a comment. I think actually the best place is going to be on LinkedIn because that's where I know everybody's going to be. So you can comment directly on this
Yeah,
post. That's a
sounds
good
good.
thing. If you're already in our Discord, you can do it there. You can hit me up on Twitter. Bob's off Twitter. I forgot about that. Or any other social media things that we're on. Just reach out to us. And if for some reason we miss it and we don't respond, hit us up again.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and Charmin, thank you. Thank you for
Absolutely.
giving us the feedback. So, Josh, let's stick a fork in it.
Let's do it.
So from beautiful downtown Cary, North Carolina,
And beautiful downtown Fuquay Varina, North Carolina.
I'm Bob Galen.
And I'm Josh Anderson.
Hey, oh, wait, hold it. You are Josh Ace Anderson. Shake.
Yes. And bake.
Take care, y'all.